on YouTube as well. So, actually, let me just. Hey, Jules. Hey, Ann. How are you guys? It's good to see you guys. All right, let me just pop that here. And if you can just bear with me for another moment, I'm going to go to YouTube and see if I can bring the live up there, and then we'll get into it. I definitely have some thoughts today for sure. All right, let me just go to the YouTube live. There we go. All right, guys. So, if you missed or you didn't have a chance to catch my live this morning, it was early in the morning, and we're Eastern time. Completely understandable. I get it. If you were with me, I may cover some stuff we already talked about earlier today. But but I'm sure it'll take a different path. I am incredibly choosing to feel, because I think that we choose our feelings, but I am choosing to feel incredibly frustrated about this White House Correspondents Dinner shooting. Not for the reasons that I should feel frustrated. The reasons that I should feel frustrated about this White House Correspondents' Dinner shooting is because whatever you're going to say about it, however the media handles it, and I have some frustrations with that, it is an act of political violence, irrespective of anything, right? Irrespective of, there's the whole stage versus real argument, and I think some reporting today is starting to clarify that, at least for the moment. There's the whole opportunistic way that the Trump administration, that the village idiot Donald Trump and the goofballs are handling it. But the frustration that I should feel, and all Americans should feel now, is but it's not where I'm at. It's 150% not where I'm at. It's just the idea that political violence is a thing, and that's not really what's bothering me. And that's weird. It's disturbing. The ridiculousness of this moment is what's bothering me. Political violence is the sick part of the political violence edge to this situation, is that we've become numb to it. We're used to it in the era of Donald Trump. The expectation now is that political violence is a thing, and that it's a thing that we have to deal with now, right? That's the expectation now, and that's appalling. It's appalling that I'm numb to political violence, that we're all numb to political violence. It's almost unthinkable, but it's reality. But that's a different conversation for another day. So, as it relates to this particular, what's frustrating me the most, it's the media. Many folks in the media right now have covered this particular shooting. Many of the people who were there and have covered this particular shooting semi-effectively, but they've also been very critical of those of us that have questioned, certainly up till now, those of us who have questioned whether or not this was even a real thing. Many have shamed us, because, like we would shame the folks in the Trump administration. I have heard reporters from within an hour, after this shooting happened, I have heard reporters from within an hour after this shooting happened start hammering away on the problem with our electorate is that there are people who are assuming I do not support Trump, Evangeline. No, he's an asshole. He's so if you stick with me for a while, although I'm not hyper focused on him specifically, if you watch my my content, I refer to him as the village idiot. So I do not support Trump, Evangeline. So not by any stretch of the imagination. And if you stick with me a little bit while I'm going through this, you'll see where I'm going. So so we were already being educated by some reporters within an hour of the shooting because a lot of us were questioning whether even this happened. And whether there were or whether there somehow there was Trump administration involvement in it. And of course, there is enough factual and for those of you who follow me, I'm certainly not a conspiracy theorist. It's not where I go. It's not what I do. And I would argue none of you are. But when this first happened, and up until some very recent reporting that came out today, I think, and the way the Trump administration behaves, the way the village idiot Donald Trump behaves, the amount of lying, corruption that they have been engaged in, the murder that ICE was directly engaged in, the murder that the killing on the high seas in the Caribbean, that drunken Pete Hegseth and the village idiot Donald Trump were so happy about. They were almost getting off on it. The covering up of the Epstein files, the consistent stories. Of course, why wouldn't you be early on? Why wouldn't you be able to ask a credible question? Is this even real? That same day, the village idiot was stuck between a 33 and a 36% approval rating. The Epstein files was and still is starting to gain traction again. The Iran war, the nonsensical, almost laughable ceasefire stupidity of the village idiot Donald Trump, where he's being rolled over and over by the Iranians consistently. Right, that laughable nonsense was taking its toll on his psyche, his conscious, and his I wouldn't say his consciousness. He was getting hammered by the Iranians. We were up to another 2 weeks. They're gonna give him 2 weeks. We're gonna extend for 2 weeks. When the Iranians weren't even fucking showing up for negotiations, right? So there were plenty of things that the idiot had to distract us from. There were plenty of things that the idiot had to distract us from. And again, every credible reporter, of which there are many, and they do excellent work, most of them, every credible reporter has been actively reporting about this. It's not like it's news. So I found it difficult to swallow, although I can appreciate the trauma that everybody in that room went through. I can appreciate the fear that a reporter might be experiencing, when they don't know what's going on, when they're hearing shots fired, when they're seeing, police with long guns coming out around them, when you have a president who was a sociopath, right? I can relate to I can appreciate the trauma and the fear. Absolutely. And I think we all have to, as decent human beings who are, humanitarians, we have to recognize what they went through. But to listen to this absurd criticism from several of the folks in the media, of which I am not one to attack the media, especially when they. And I'm not going to point out the name as I discuss some of these different issues. I'm not going to point out the names of any reporters because they get enough attacking themselves from the village idiot Donald Trump. But for them to come out and make the argument that folks out there on social media and in the pro-democracy community, were part of the problem, were the problem, because there was this speculation out there that is fully supported by the day-to-day historical account that we're all living through. We can see with our eyes, and we can hear with our ears. That the historical account of the behavior of the village idiot Donald Trump and the goofballs around him, and the lengths that they will go to for us to question whether or not this was even real. It's not QAnon-esque. It's not MAGA-like. There is a distinction between the pro-democracy community out here on social and just in the world who are like, what the fuck? Come on, guys. And the conspiracy theorist lunatic wing of the Trump administration who love Trump. There's a big difference between formerly MAGA darling, now, no longer because she's sort of woken up. But there's a difference between Jewish space lasers, right? And the believing the nonsense that ISIS, that 70% of the people that ISIS is deporting are actually violent criminals. Right, there's a clear distinction between that sort of delusional thinking where you're being fed propaganda by Fox News, and you might believe any kind of bullshit as long as it comes out of a lunatic's mouth who one might worship. There's a distinction between that community and a community of clear-minded thinkers who are so used to an administration that lies consistently, and their backs are against the wall politically, and they're getting destroyed in the PR war by the Iranians of all people. That they may have some weird shit might have been going on as it pertains to this alleged shooting. Now, look, we have some credible reporting today. I'm not, as much as I'm willing to entertain different perspectives, as long as they're based in reality, as long as I'm just because I'm willing to entertain those different perspectives doesn't mean, again, unlike the MAGA, the MAGA faithful, right? It doesn't mean that I'm not open to factual information as it finds its way into my consciousness, right? So I just read some good reporting this morning that provided the name of the shooter. I can't remember what his name is offhand, but I provided information about the fact that he traveled from California to Chicago to D.C., provided information about the fact that he had written this manifesto, that he had reached out to his family, apologizing for what he was intending to do, that his brother, when he had gotten that letter from when his brother received that message saying that this guy was going to do this crazy, potentially awful shit, he reached out to his local police department. The good reporters not only got that story, but confirmed with the police department that the brother had reached out to them prior to the attack. So, when you get that reporting, as a rational thinker, you take it into account, right? And I do. And it after reading that reporting, cross-referencing that reporting with a couple different credible news outlets that aren't fucking Fox News, right? I'm able to sit more confidently this morning and say that it does clearly appear that this is not any kind of a false flag operation, right? It does clearly appear that the administration didn't set this up in some capacity. And of course, that doesn't mean we're not going to get counterfacts that are going to come out in 4 days. Every time the Trump administration lies about something, 4 days later, we're not able to pinpoint the lie at that moment, 3-4 days later, we get and the media fell for it. But the legacy media fell for it, and then you have independent media reporting on it, reporting the facts with a little bit more nuance and reporting the different potential lines of investigation on a particular story, and then we find out Trump was lying about some shit, and the whole story kind of blows up, and the mainstream media if the narrative falls apart because the real facts came out. Now, maybe that will happen again, and that seems less likely, but you never know. I haven't closed my mind to the idea yet that the Trump administration somehow had some involvement in this, but it seems less likely. I would argue it seems highly unlikely at this point. And that's a little different than I felt this morning. It's a little different than I felt yesterday. But I'm willing to change, and I'm willing to be wrong. And I'm willing, and if things change again, I'm willing to be wrong again. It's okay. And if there's anyone here from the MAGA community, let me inform you that it's okay. This is what we do. When we're wrong, we adjust, right? And we accept that we're wrong, and we, move on. So, and we adjust our narrative to whatever the real truth is. So, but irrespective of what the facts are on the ground, I really, really took issue with some of the absurd, what I would consider to be absurd reactions of, as I was talking about earlier today, earlier in this live, some of the absurd reactions of some reporters who, were making the argument, who are in essence arguing. I heard a particular reporter who I respect, who I will continue to respect. I'm not going to stop watching this person's reporting, and I'm not going to out this person because I'm not Donald Trump. I'm not, but, who talked about the fact that the problem right now wasn't Donald Trump. The problem wasn't the village idiot Donald Trump. The problem wasn't that, we have never seen a level of political violence like we've seen since the village idiot Donald Trump, who uses violent rhetoric all the time, became president of the United States, right? But the problem was us. The problem was that we were because a lot of us felt that this actually, that it's not unthinkable that this was a false flag operation, that this was, that we were the problem here in the United States of America. And this wasn't a pro-Trump reporter. This was somebody who criticizes Trump. But this is also somebody that, works for a legacy news outlet that is absolutely dependent on access journalism. And what is access journalism? It's that you don't go after the people that you need access to in order to get people to watch your reporting. So you don't fully hold them accountable for everything they're doing. And at some point you kind of back off a little bit, and only when there's enough upward pressure from at this point, when there's enough upward pressure from independent media that doesn't give a shit about access to Donald Trump or Pete Hegseth. They don't give a flying fuck if he never talks to them. Only when you get upward pressure from them, and because the internet is the powerhouse of news distribution right now, far more so than legacy media will be ever again, that upward pressure will now frequently give those who work, many, not all of them, but many who work in legacy media, the gumption, the strength, the I don't know what the right word is, but the inspiration to start pushing harder against the president of the United States. And by no means do again, I'm not saying that legacy media, there aren't a lot of folks in legacy media that are hypercritical of the president. But, we're in a moment now where things are so ridiculous right? We're in a moment now where things are so utterly ridiculous and so utterly corrupt that covering President Trump differently than the way the Midas Touch News Network does is journalistic malpractice. It's almost laughable. And I'm not saying that every media outlet should be as, with Ben Masalis, he delivers the news and he delivers it as an op-ed, right? He delivers straight news and it's delivered as an opinion piece. I'm not saying they should do that. And I'm not and Ben Masalis isn't, from the Midas Touch News Network, he isn't polished. He's not a trained reporter. He's not a hyper polished reporter. But you know what? The reality is, when you're delivering the absurdity of this news, you're delivering the absurdity of the moment that we're living in. That's real. It's true. So when you're communicating with Donald Trump like he's not fucking crazy, even if you can do it, in a more polished, in a more newsy way than Ben Masalis or than I do it, certainly, then you're doing your job. But when you're afraid of losing access to him because you'll get thrown out of the White House press corps, who cares? What are you getting out of being there anyway, right? Like, you'll get thrown out of the Pentagon. You already did. Who cares? But you if you cover a circus and you don't cover the clowns, then you're not covering the circus because you're worried the circus won't let you back in. You know what I mean? And I think in some weird way that's the moment we find ourselves in. Squib, sorry, you're ignorant. Why should I listen to a clown? If you're still here, Squib, you don't have to. You're welcome to not. There's no rules. Thank you. So, guys, I have a difficult time with this. I really do. These last 2 days, and it's unfortunate. I find that I feel numb to the violence, especially knowing now that it was an act of violence, and I do feel numb to that, and that's really sad. But I can't, I can't ignore the fact that legacy media, and corporate media is partially responsible for the reason that we're in this situation in the first place, because it rarely had the courage in the early days to question Trump. Still, at this moment, we're still facing this ridiculous media divide, right? Where Trump's mental illness is not extensively covered. Yet Biden's declining ability to communicate effectively was all over every news outlet. And that reality, that simple fact, and that's an indisputable fact, right? I mean, I don't know how anyone who's watching legacy media can argue that, right? They are not covering Donald Trump's mental illness. They are not covering his mental decline because that's the factual part. The opinion part is because they're afraid to. Their corporate overlords don't want to get sued and don't want to settle with the idiot. Individually, I think some folks are probably afraid of losing access. If they lose access, maybe they're afraid of losing their job. They don't all have it in them to come here to Substack and build their own little independent media community. And I get it, that's not for everyone. But they're partially responsible for the reason we're in this mess. And the chickens are coming home to roost at this point. Because I am, being a former freelance reporter myself, I don't think there is any more important institution in a democracy than the news. And I think we have one of the best news media infrastructures on the entire planet, but they're failing. And I know there's a resurgence here in here on independent media. I think that's where the future of the news is. But they're failing. And and when they get defensive, even in the midst of what, thank God, was not a catastrophe. But when they get so defensive that in the beginning of the catastrophe, more than two handfuls of them start attacking us as the crazy people, it's I'm speechless. I don't even know what to say about it. And again, if you I was watching. Even though I couldn't, we had a lot of company, everything, I was still staying in the news. And I was watching Midas's coverage juxtaposed against MS Now, CNN. I don't watch Fox's coverage unless I'm looking for some propaganda to talk about. But I certainly never watch it during a crisis moment. But if you watched Midas Touch's coverage, it was balanced. Like actually balanced, not balanced politically because there's a political edge to there, but the perspective was fully balanced. They recognized that basically that there were plenty of indications that this was actually a real thing, that there are real people experiencing it in real time, and a shitload of them are reporters. So it's there. They were reporting on the facts on the ground, and then they were reporting on the fact that there was the history of the Trump administration, and that could have suggested that they tried to create a fake real thing, and there were indications on the ground that could have been the case, and they were reporting on those too. And they weren't coming to a judgment call. They were reporting everything as it was happening on all social media channels. But the mainstream media went with what basically half of the country struggled to buy into. I'm guessing it was half of the country. At that moment is this bullshit? Is this a bunch of bullshit? And legacy media was like, fuck no. This was this not only were they of the position that there's no way this could be a bunch of bullshit. It had to be real because we lived through it. And because we are not crazy, we are not conspiratorial like you guys are. But they went some of those personalities went there and in essence played into the hand of Donald Trump by making the suggestion that that you had the crazy left. And it was really frustrating. And then I was watching Don Lemon's coverage to Don Lemon's live. I don't know if any of you guys saw it. Hi, Contimid, how are you? I don't know if you saw Don Lemon's live earlier today. I wanted to watch Lemon because he's lived in both worlds. He's in independent media now. He's lived in broadcast media or cable news. And sometimes when I'm hell bent on a position in a situation like this, Don Lemon I think can kind of set me straight sometimes because I feel like again he's been on both sides of the news stuff, and if I like many of you, I was wondering, I was slapping myself because I'm thinking, am I getting conspiratorial now? Like, am I losing it? So I decided I watched Don Lemon and getting his take on it, and then I heard a young, I don't know who he was. If any of you were guys who were watching it, you might know watching him earlier today. You saw Don Gale. So one of the reporters that was on with Don this morning. Lemon was interviewing two reporters, right? And it was fine, right? They were giving their perspectives on it. Don was giving his perspective, and it was fine. And then they bought the 60 Minutes clip up where Nora from 60 Minutes was reading, she read to the village idiot a little bit of the manifesto about the pedophile. And the village idiot immediately jumped in. You could tell his wheels were turning. He was panicking. He was angry. A woman was she wasn't even challenging him about being a pedophile. She was just reading. A female was reading about, and he doesn't like that, about him being, somebody calling him a pedophile, even though in this case it was the shooter. And he was like, excuse me, I get you're a horrible person. You're all horrible people. You should be ashamed. I'm not a pedophile. I'm not a rapist, which was in essence with the village idiot. Like that was almost a confession from my perspective, right? But they were talking about that clip and about how Nora Ephron, how she was, Don Lemon had talked about how she was like being, she didn't deserve that. She had she was asking the question and she didn't deserve to be insulted by the idiot, right? And so they had brought that up. And then the young reporter, one of the guys, and again, I'm assuming he's young, I don't know, he said, I can only respond as the most tone deaf, fucking clueless thing that I could. I was almost stunned by the stupidity of it. And again, this is from a smart young man who is in the game and is not, on Fox fucking News. His question was, well, Don, what do you think? Do you think she should have really read that? Like, do you think Trump has a point? And, I heard this and I was gobsmacked by the absurdity of the question. This is a reporter, right? A real reporter. In the game, right? Talking with the other reporters are talking about, and Don Lemon, about how abusive the village idiot is to the press. And then this gentleman says, well, should she have read that? And should she have read a part of the manifesto to Donald Trump to get his reaction to it? And I was like, and Don Lemon, thankfully, thank God, Don answered it. Don was like, yes. I mean, Don was nicer than I could have been. Because I would have been like, I feel like in that moment, I would have been like, are you out of your fucking mind? Did you really ask me that fucking question? Are you alive? Right? Are you sleeping through this? And are you a reporter? Do you not report news? Can there possibly be a reporter so deep in the whataboutism bubble that you're going to hammer somebody like, a seasoned reporter like Nora, who has forgotten more than you will ever know about making a journalistic choice, which is you're not going to get a straighter-laced reporter than her, right? And you're so ignorantly, and again, I don't know what outlet this guy works for, so I have to parse my opinion on this a little bit, because maybe I'm wrong about this, but my guess is that if you're working for one of the corporate outlets, you're so you're so brainwashed or stupefied, which is a better word, by the regulatory corporate structure within your environment, that you're like, that's a bad question because it made Donald uncomfortable because she was talking about fucking rape when this idiot has been fucking, convicted of rape, when there are hundreds of thousands, if not in the millions, of his mention in the Epstein files that we've seen, not to mention what we haven't seen, the 3 million files, that he's been credibly accused of rape, 19 or 24 times? That there are pictures of him all but fondling young girls? And this guy, this reporter, asked this question I would hammer back to the reporter, again, who made the argument an hour after the shooting that we're the problem. I would argue back, no, sir. This is the problem. The fact that one of your colleagues was so deft. Who is your colleague who is far smarter than this? Far, far smarter than this. But is so full of corporate news-generated kiss Trump's ass bullshit, right? That they're going to ask whether or not it was okay that she read that part of the manifesto from the shooter out loud, and the village idiot Donald Trump got a little bit twisted. It is exactly what her job is and what your job is, my friends. And that leads me to one other point, and then I'm going to get to your comments, and then I'll get off my fucking soapbox. I am really upset about this, as you can tell. Like, I mean, I am really upset about this because it exposes an underbelly of the press that I don't want to face. I don't want to face it. I don't want to face it because I don't want to face that our corporate press is so fucking broken that it's up to me. It's up to Don Lemon, right? It's up to Tara Palmieri. It's up to Midas Touch News Network, right? Because not enough people are watching us. It's up to fucking Waj Ali and Lev Parnas and Joy Reid. People from all of, it's up to all of my friends in the chorus program. Not enough of us are watching us, guys. And we are all labeled as partisans, and probably rightfully so. But if the corporate press is so fucking broken that the world is counting on us to be the press, right? That's depressing. You know, and I don't know where to go with that, because we need Midas Touch News Network, which is the biggest news outlet right now within the independent media space, does not have the resources, right? They don't have the resources to have correspondents always in the middle. They don't have, you know, like the New York Times and the Washington Post and MSNBC and NBC News and CNN. They don't have an office in Jordan and an office in Israel and an office. They don't have a Russia division, right? They don't have, active European. They just got into fucking Canada, and I don't even think there's an office now. They just got their first two full-time correspondents in DC, right? We need legacy media. We need legacy. We need corporate press for now, because we don't have the resources that they have or the experience, you know? So we need it. But as corporate press, did this conversation that I saw on I think I may have been reading into it, but it looked to me like Don was even a little bit, hey, Blue Veru, how are you? It looked like Don was even a little bit shocked and stunned by the absurdity of the statement. But I think, I think this statement, at least from my perspective, was I am frustrated because it is indicative. I fear of the bubble that they live in, and I'm not gonna look, I'm not gonna out anybody here, any of the subscribers, but rightfully, one of our subscribers said to me when I was posting shit about how ridiculous this was, called me out on it, rightfully. And during the shooting, and said, Mitch, what about the real things people are going through? What about these reporters that were actually on the scene that are dealing with real trauma right now, that are terrified? You got to recognize that, Mitch. And this person was absolutely right. I have allowed myself to become so jaded and so numb to the reality of the political violence associated with the Trump administration. I didn't care about that. And I was so hyper-focused on how I felt that members of the press who I have supported were actually attacking me because I questioned the validity of the attack, the alleged attack on the president or whomever, and I had to check myself and I had to think about what that subscriber said and realize I had to reclaim my humanity in that moment and stop. And I had to take a moment and respond to that particular comment because when I'm responding to the comment, it gives me a chance to self-reflect and recognize that I'm getting caught up in a certain amount of delusion, in a certain amount of numbness, and I have to adjust. And I did, and I have. And and there's a reason I'm bringing this up, and I'm going to get to that in a second. I had to break myself in real time because somebody called me out on my bullshit. I had to break out of my bubble and recognize, where I was missing a point that I needed to be aware of. And the reason I'm bringing that up specifically is within the legacy media infrastructure now, from some of the reactions I'm seeing from these people who I feel for, because I get that they were terrified, and that's awful. And I pray for them. I would sit and meditate with any of them. I would donate if they if they couldn't go get therapy because I sure as fuck, if I was in there and I couldn't have gone to the White House Correspondents Dinner. No, but I had an opportunity to go to DC. There were plenty of events going on for those of us that are either independent journalists or independent creators. And through Chorus, I had an absolute opportunity to go. It's not something that I could do because my family obligations preclude me from being able to do it. But I could have been there. And had I been anywhere near that location, I would be in therapy today because I would be processing that fear. So I respect, I honor that. But at the same time, I also have to recognize this bubble that I think a lot of our corporate media personalities find themselves stuck in, and they are not having that awakening. When I listened to that young man on the Don Lemon show ask that question, and I think about the absurdity of that question that he asked Don that I was talking about just a moment ago, I realized that that's coming from a culture, a corporate news culture that is obsessed with access to the president and is afraid of Donald Trump, and the fact that these reporters are not breaking out of that, and it's troubling to me because here's the thing. And then I'll shut up about it, I think. Everybody who was at that party was either wearing a tuxedo or a really nice evening gown, and that's fantastic. They deserve an opportunity to have a nice night out, right? Everybody until that point was enjoying a nice salad, in a beautiful ballroom. They were in an environment of luxury, right? And again, we all deserve it. You work hard, you deserve it. It's another story whether or not I have a lot more respect for the journalists that didn't go because you're hobnobbing with a sociopathic autocrat who was trying to who was actively destroying our democracy, who was telling you you're the enemy of the state, who consistently insults you, and who wants to literally jail you or kill you, and you're going to have dinner with him and laugh with him and the creeps around him. So that's another story, right? But they're in this isolated bubble, right, in Washington D.C. And they're in this bubble with the Secret Service, with the federal marshals. I don't know if Capitol Police were there, with local law enforcement all over the place, right? So, you're sitting down for maybe a $250 or I'm just guessing, I don't know, $300 dinner, right? And, We're not. I'm not, right? I'm in my little fucking room right here. And thankfully, I'm safe. But I put myself out here every day, and I don't get lots of threats, but I get enough of them. Actual threats, literally, right? I don't get lots of them because I haven't grown that much yet, but I get enough of them. You have independent journalists who were on the ground every day in Minneapolis, who were getting the shit, who didn't have corporate lawyers to protect, to defend them from the Trump administration. They were getting gas. They were getting the shit beaten out of them day in and day out. Look, I didn't see tons of MSNBC, CNN reporters on the ground in the middle of it, like I saw the status quo reporters, literally in the mix of it, right? So, yeah, and I get a Washington Post reporter. It was horrible. The FBI was Kash Patel's dingbat, the dingbat Kash Patel, using the FBI to go raid her apartment in Washington, D.C. Unacceptable. But that's also who you were sitting down. He was there. I'm not saying she was there with him, but reporters, that's who you were sitting down to fucking dinner with. So there's that. But my point is that thank God nobody left that dinner in a stretcher. Thank God we didn't have to see horrific images of blood, because that was what the shooter's intent was. Thank God for that. Thank God. But honestly, at this point, everybody's a fucking being in the wrong place at the wrong time, or stalking an influencer, or stalking an independent reporter. Everybody in the country, if you're, is a footstep away of being a victim of this government, let alone some sociopathic extremist from the MAGA right, or to a lesser extent, some left-wing extremist who is angry about something, right? All of us who are not in line with the Trump administration are targets. Every minute of every hour of every day. Look at the migrants who can't walk out in the fucking street without worrying about getting, if they survive, getting roughed, getting the shit beaten out of them by ICE or whatever else. If they make it to the fucking detention center in one piece, right? There's a damn good chance, or I should say, a possible chance they're going to die in detention, right? If they don't die in detention, there's a possible chance they're going to be dropped off in the middle of fucking nowhere and they'll die before they get home. There's an excellent chance they'll be deported to Guatemala or El Salvador, where, there are gangs who want to kill them, that they'll die there. Or there's a good chance that they were from Honduras and they're going to wind up in some tiny little African country that is a dictatorship, and they don't even know how the fuck they got there after being shackled for 40 hours until they get there. None of them are sitting at the White House Correspondents Dinner with a fucking bow tie and a $75 salad. And because you're rattled, rightfully so, but because you're rattled, because you were stuck in a moment, a horrific moment of potential catastrophic violence that, thank God, turned out to be okay. But, get some fucking perspective. Wake the fuck up to how good you have it, right? Wake up to the bubble that you live in. Thank you very much, before you come out an hour after the shooting and start hammering all of the people who are out here every day in the field without the corporate lawyers, without being able to go to a dinner where the fucking Secret Service is protecting you, right? I'm not saying journalists don't put themselves out. They do. And I honor them for that. But in this moment, at this time, on this day, that reaction that they had was that not all of them, but many of them had, was unacceptable to me. And the cluelessness of this young man is that asked Don Lemon that stupid fucking question is clearly indicative of what type of bubble legacy media finds itself in or chooses to be in. And it's disgraceful because they have a responsibility to keep us aware, to keep us informed. But you can't keep us informed, my friends. You can't keep us adequately informed if you're engaged with a deal with the people you're supposed to inform us about. Because all you can do when you're in that situation is come right up to the line, but then you're going to back off. Come right up to the line, and then you're going to back off. And for my ranting and raving, for whatever it's worth, it's, I feel bad saying this because, again, I know the idiot attacks the media nonstop, and that is not really what I want to do. Like, I want to preface it by saying this is not, my frustration with this situation is not an attack on the media. It's not even an attack on the people in the media who, were basically telling me that, in essence, as a citizen, not just an influencer, that I'm the problem, right? Right? It's not even an attack on that. What it is a full-throated criticism of what is gallingly apparent right now in our media, in within our legacy media space, and that is this adversarial, yet it's like an adversarial partnership that corporate media has with the Trump administration that is imposed upon many corporate media staffers. You can't have it both ways, my friends. You just can't. You can't have it both ways. You can't have access to an autocratic president and do your job as a reporter. You just can't. If you get thrown out, if you can go in there and you can challenge them and you don't get thrown out, that's awesome. Stay in the game. If you get thrown out, so be it. But, you can't walk that fine line. It just doesn't work in a democracy. That's my opinion. Let me read some of your comments. I've got YouTube over here. Let me just bring the Substack window over here. For those of you from YouTube, you may not know because you may not see me. I just started on YouTube Shorts, but I have a teleprompter right here where I can see comments, but it's about 4 feet away. And that's where my camera's coming through, but it's about 4 feet away from me, and my reading glasses do not work to be able to read your comments. And my distance glasses are too far. Like my reading glasses, it's not close enough. And my distance, it's too far away. So I can't read comments over what I'm looking over there. So I have to pull you guys over here. So let's see. So we have Evangeline says, "What are my thoughts depicting him as Jesus?" It's ridiculous. I mean, that's a different conversation, Evangeline, but I'll definitely just hold that thought for a minute. Squitch, sorry, I'm ignorant, and you shouldn't listen to a clown. Okay, yes, you should not. I'm just grabbing a tissue, guys. You should not listen to a clown. Shameful. Due process is a constitutional law. It is against the law to kidnap people, illegal or not, without giving them due process their day in court. Tony, you're 100% right. This is the U.S. Constitution. I couldn't agree with you more, and that's exactly 100% correct. And this is what authoritarians do. Gail, wait, Haley, it's your birthday, or whose birthday is it? Is it Gail's birthday? Gail, happy birthday, 75. God bless you. Awesome. Gail, happy birthday. Let me just see. I don't know if we have. Hang on, everybody. Don't go anywhere. Let me see if I have in my sound effects. Do I have happy birthday? I've been meaning to get that for you. I mean, I've got this. It's kind of pathetic. I know. Let's do it again. I got this. I can do this. Happy birthday. Oh, you know what? That's not good enough. I've got a better applause. No, I don't. I thought I had a better applause than that. You know what? The best we can do, Gail, happy birthday to you. But, for your birthday, let's just do a quick couple minutes of the circus song. No relation to the circus, your birthday, but it'll make us feel a little bit better that we're reminding us that we're living in a circus. And that's enough of that. But happy birthday, Gail. I am lesson learned. I am going to download the Substack. I don't know if you can. Oh yeah, Roz. I'm so sorry, guys. You can't hear it because you guys aren't on my on the streaming platform anymore. TikTok, you guys. I mean, whatever you are, guys. I'm sorry. YouTube, you guys heard it. I'm sorry about that, Beth. My fuck up there. I'm really, guys, this thing with my, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. My sound effects are so important. But this inability right now to stream live directly to Substack is so frustrating. And I don't know what my solution is going to be. I've tried several different platforms. I'm having trouble with each one of them. With Ecamm Live, which is my primary streaming platform. Somebody from their PR department keeps telling me she's talking to tech support. I got so upset with them today. I got so frustrated with them today. I told her I'm never calling them again. I'm never emailing or DMing again. I'm done. And I'm so fed up. And then she's like, because they keep telling me they're fixing it, and then nothing ever happens. But I don't know if I'm done but I'm going to get to the bottom of it at sooner or later. But I'm sorry about that. Anyway, happy birthday. Happy birthday, Gail. Let me just see if we have any other comments. Oh shoot, I can't, I don't know why I can't go up or down. I know you guys had some really good comments. Here we go. Now I can scroll. All right. So Lacey, the media should not blame us for not believing this. They helped Americans get here. They have been irresponsible in their coverage and sane washing everything. And I would agree with you on that. You're absolutely right, Lacey. I agree with you absolutely. Haley reminds us that we still need to enjoy amidst all this craziness. Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't know why I'm having so much trouble with there we go. Probably need to get a new mouse. Please out the journalist who said this. Lacey, it's I can't because I honestly don't know their name. Either of the journalists. The journalist that I saw on MS Now, at least I think it could have been CNN. He's a journalist that I am familiar with. I would know him if I saw him on the street. He's more of I think he's more of sort of like an analyst or a Democratic strategist than maybe a journalist. I don't know his name. I've always liked his perspectives on things. I frequently agree with him. But I can't think of his name. And I'm not sure I would do it anyway, because I just don't want to go, I don't know. I just don't want to go down the rabbit hole. The other guy on Don Lemon, I mean, I have no idea who the guy is. I don't know what his name is. So I couldn't out the journalist, out him even if I wanted to. And it looks like, I mean, to the extent that I can see, I'll have to play around with this chat, guys, as much as I'm playing around with everything as I try to figure out how to solve my never-ending technical problems. But I can't go up and down anymore in the chat. It's kind of stuck here. But I think I've gotten to most of your comments. So anyway, just to kind of wrap it up, guys, where I find myself now in terms of just the reporting right now, where I find myself at this point is I am, based on the reporting I read today, I'm more apt to believe that this really happened. I think there's enough reporting for me to suggest that, I mean, it really happened, but whether or not the Trump administration was involved in it, in setting it up in some capacity, I'm about 80%. This was generally just a guy, um, another guy who should have never had access to a gun, who was, he just happened to be on the right side of history in terms of the Trump administration. He was on the wrong side of sanity and common sense, and it seems like he went and tried to do this. I am the 30%. Why I'm about 80-20 right now is, again, I know they're capable of it. I know the Trump administration is capable of doing something like this, and I wouldn't put it past them. And as good reporters, kind of get a hold of this and start to dig into it, as independent media digs into it, if they do, and they start researching this guy and looking things up, you just never know. You never know that we're going to find out something, because it's almost too perfect, right? He went from California to Chicago, right, to D.C. So he went from and to everywhere that Donald hates, right? Right. He went from there. He is so he was a California liberal crazy person, right? The other thing is Trump isn't calling him. Trump isn't calling him Antifa. Normally, he would tie this to make up the Antifa thing and tie this to the whole Republican, Democrat, the lunatics are out to get him, and he's not doing any of that. He's playing it down. He's calling him a lunatic. He called him a lone wolf. That's always skeptical for me when Trump isn't. He's trying to take advantage of it to make it be beneficial for his ballroom, right? You can make the argument that it seems, how is it that they were so well prepared when they're not fucking prepared for anything? How is it that they were so remarkably well prepared to? They were within 40 minutes. The idiot was posting the video surveillance. Some of that was in color. How did they get that surveillance ready and clipped so quickly? They can't even fucking tie their shoes without tripping over themselves, right? So, and how did they have? Although it was an offensive and absurd and ridiculous narrative, how did they have the narrative so well thought out? Again, as ridiculous as it was, that this is justification to have the fucking ballroom, right? So, and how was it that within minutes of the press conference, all these coordinated right-wing social media accounts started fucking just immediately parroting the talking points? I mean, maybe they just did that, right? But it seemed that's where I'm kind of 80-20 on this. There's still 20% that's like, this just doesn't add up. It doesn't. And again, the other point is, how can the Secret Service be this bad? How can the Secret Service be this bad? How can they be this incompetent, right? That is hard. For those of you that are my age, or maybe even a little younger, or certainly older, it is unthinkable that the president, the vice president, many of the Trumpian dingbats from the cabinet, members of Congress, the Speaker of the House. I don't know if the Senate Majority Leader was there. How is it that you would get anywhere near that fucking building? You wouldn't even get. It's unthinkable. How is it that you would even get near the street? When the village idiot goes to New York, the Secret Service locks. It's the traffic all across the borough of Manhattan. Not all, but most of the borough of Manhattan. When he was on trial, right? He's downtown. You could be in fucking Midtown, and you would be, just drowning in traffic because they shut all of downtown New York City down. So shut the streets down. So come on, like, that's a tough pill to swallow as well. You had plenty of reporting from people on the scene that security was incredibly lax. How is that possible with the President of the United States? And Gamer Vet Dad, correct me if I'm wrong on this. I brought it up in the live earlier, but you weren't with us. I don't think there's been an actual attempt on a president's life since Reagan. Am I right? I certainly nothing where a shooter showed up. Maybe there have been plots that have been, stopped and stuff like that. I'm not even aware of any of them that I can recall. But I don't recall anything since Reagan where somebody with a gun got anywhere near a president, right? The Secret Service is too good, right? Since Reagan. So how is it that since this idiot has been president, and since the campaign, since what began as the campaign for his second presidency into his second presidency, how is it nothing credible that I can recall, right? So what is that, 40 years or more, right? How is it that somehow this idiot gets elected, or this idiot before the idiot gets elected? He's, you got Butler, you got the assassination attempt during the campaign in Butler, PA. You've got the shooting, the non-shooting that never happened during the campaign outside one of his golf courses, right? Which the Secret Service was very competent with. That guy never got a shot off, and he got caught pretty quickly. Well, they were aware of him pretty quickly. He ran away, but they stopped him pretty quickly. They found him quickly. But how is it, and now this, how is it that there's been nothing for 40 years or more, and now somehow, 3 times, did the Secret Service just suddenly suck? Did the village idiot cut enough? Well, I mean, couldn't have cut anything before he was president during the campaign, but subsequently, did he fuck up the leadership at the Secret Service so badly that they're this incompetent? How is it even possible, right? So when you take those things into consideration, right, it's not unreasonable to think that, that this was a created thing. And when you add to it that, he was polling between 33 and 37%, and heading closer to the 33 basically in the days before and the day of, that the Iranians have been making a public ass out of him. He's like a fucking, J.D. Vance and the other two schmucks, Kushner and Steve Witkoff. They're like a prom date, waiting for the Iranians, to pick them up to go to the prom, to go to these fucking negotiations, right? He's being humiliated by the Iranians. Humiliated. The Epstein files was about to kick up. So, you got plenty of credible reasons to think that this could have been bullshit. And even with the good reporting that has come out today that I've read that leads me to feel 70% confident this actually was a nutcase, I can't, 70, 80%. All of those other things, which are real, just as real, they're not Jewish space lasers, right? Or they're not pretending that 70% of the migrants that are picked up are actually violent criminals. They're rapists. They're from they emptied the mental institutions, and they're a bunch of rapists. We're getting them. It's not that kind of thinking. It's thinking based on facts and reality. So, there we are. Anyway. All right, guys, got to wrap. Got my daily briefing in just 5 minutes. So thank you so much for being here. 1 minute at a time, 1 hour at a time, 1 day at a time, one live at a time. That's how we do this here. This is how we get through the Trump presidency. We just keep chunking through it. This will be, the recording will be up on Substack in a bit. It'll be up on YouTube as well. Well, actually, YouTube. Oh, the dog's realizing that we're done. So she's getting interested on going. You're not going out yet, sweetheart. I got my daily briefing. Then you're going out. But it is amazing that she knows by the intonation of my voice that the live is over. It's pretty cool. Thank you, Beth. Thank you, Gail. Happy birthday again. Jill, nope, it was real. I hear you, Jill. I'm not arguing that position at all. Haley, they don't. I can't see. They don't want him killed. They just want us fearful and distracted. Fair point. And let's end it with that. All right, my friends. I will see you all soon. Be well. I'm going to first end the live on YouTube because I have to click 2 different buttons. So YouTube, thank you, my friends.